He complied with the subpoena.
We would
time's expired.
We would have loved that.
Do any other members wish to be heard? Chair recognizes Ms. Mace from South Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Chairman Comer. First of all, my first question is, who bribed Hunter Biden to be here today? That's my first question. Second question, you are the epitome of white privilege, coming into the Oversight Committee, spitting in our face, ignoring a congressional subpoena to be deposed. What are you afraid of? You have no balls to come up here and...
Mr. Chairman, point of inquiry.
Mr. Chairman,
if the
gentlelady wants to hear from Hunter Biden, we can hear from him right now, Mr. Chairman. Let's take a vote and hear from Hunter Biden. What are you afraid of?
Hold on. Order.
Are women allowed to speak in here or no? Are women allowed to speak in here or no? Could you keep interrupting me?
I'll interrupt the chairman. I don't know that he's a lady.
I think that that Hunter Biden should be arrested right here, right now, and go straight to jail. Our nation is founded on the rule of law.
Come on.
And the premise that the law applies equally to everyone, no matter what your last
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. Point of order.
It doesn't matter who you are.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. Biggs over here.
Donald Trump Jr.
Biggs over here.
State your point, Mr. Biggs.
Yeah, my point of order is this. Are we going to continue on with this blatant interruption? This is absurd and inappropriate. I intend to give my statement. I don't intend to have anybody interrupted. I'm not going to interrupt your statements. I think you should have decorum and courtesy and don't act like a bunch of nimrods.
You just interrupted a woman.
And that's 5.
I got permission.
Can we agree? Everyone has
Mr.
5
Chairman,
minutes. Can we agree?
Point of order again. The assertion that I interrupted was absolutely false. That's typical of the gentleman who spoke it. I got permission to speak from the chairman. I spoke. I was interrupted yet again by the gentleman who doesn't choose to go through the chair and follow proper order. I encourage us, I think if we're going to have any respect at all, we need to have proper decorum.
Well said.
I'd like to finish.
The rules are everyone's going to be recognized for 5 minutes. Anyone that wants to be recognized will be recognized for 5 minutes. Ms. Mace has 4 minutes and 13 seconds left. Chair recognizes Ms. Mace.
It does not matter who you are, where you come from, or who your father is, or your last name. Yes, I'm looking at you, Hunter Biden, as I'm speaking to you. You are not above the law at all. The facts in this case are crystal clear. This committee used and issued a lawful subpoena to Hunter Biden, a critical witness in this committee's investigation into Biden family corruption. Hunter Biden and his lawyers did not claim privilege of any kind because clearly he has none. They didn't contest the legitimacy of our reasons for issuing this subpoena, no reasons, because they clearly are legitimate. And yet he refused to comply. Trump's family members, Don Trump Jr., he did not defy a congressional subpoena. He showed up multiple times for multiple depositions for several hours. In doing so, Hunter Biden broke the law. He did so deliberately. You did so flagrantly. You showed up on the Hill, on the Senate side, the day of that congressional subpoena to defy it and spit in the face of this committee. That's what you did. The question the American people are asking us is, what is Hunter Biden so afraid of? Why can't you show up for a congressional deposition? You're here for a political stunt. This is just a PR stunt to you. This is just a game that you are playing with the American people. You're playing with the truth. Hunter Biden wasn't afraid to sell access to Joe Biden to the highest bidder when he was in elected office. He wasn't afraid to trade on the Biden brand, peddle influence, and share those ill-gotten gains with members of his family, including Joe Biden. He wasn't afraid to compromise the integrity of the presidency and vice presidency by involving Joe Biden in shady business deals with our foreign adversaries. But Hunter Biden, you were too afraid to show up for a deposition, and you still can't today. I believe that Hunter Biden should be held completely in contempt. I think he should be hauled off to jail right now, because it wasn't long ago, too, my friends on the other side of the aisle, that you also believed in the power of a congressional subpoena. Not long ago at all. You believed in holding those who refused to comply with a congressional subpoena accountable. And I stood with each and every one of you. I am the only member in this room today who has held a member of my own party in contempt of Congress for not showing up for a subpoena. And I see nothing but complete hypocrisy on the other side of the aisle. The ranking member of this committee even so eloquently put it, the lesson is, please tell your children out there in America, If you get a subpoena to go before Congress, go. You have a legal responsibility to do so. So the hypocrisy is stunning. What are we to tell our children today? There's nothing the other side can say with a straight face. As the only member of this committee to vote to hold a member of contempt of my own party, let me be clear, this should not be a partisan issue. If Congress issues a subpoena, you show up, period. This is not a responsibility we take lightly. It brings no joy for us to do this, but the president's son broke the law and must be held accountable in the same way anybody else would. I urge my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to do so. And my last message to you, Hunter Biden, you play stupid games, you win stupid prizes.
Will the gentlelady yield for a question? Will the gentlelady yield? Will my friend yield from South Carolina?
Sure.
I do want to commend the gentlelady who was the only Republican who stood up and voted to hold in contempt the Republican members of the House who blatantly and categorically refused to comply with subpoenas that came from the bipartisan January 6th committee. I would like to ask my friend, Ms. Mace from South Carolina, whether she's aware of all the case law which says that the committee has to engage in good faith interaction with the witnesses they've called, and they're supposed to arrive at a solution. And what do you think about the fact that the chairman on multiple occasions gave this witness the opportunity to come before the full committee, and he agreed to that?
We issued a congressional subpoena, and I know with your constitutional law background, you know exactly what that means, and he should have showed up. And because of your vote and because of your statements, you should be voting to hold this man in contempt of Congress today, right now, if you're going to be consistent on your own policies and your own words.
Gentlelady's time's expired. Chair recognizes Mr. Moskowitz for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's good to see you after a long break. So I'm listening to the gentlelady from South Carolina about the witness being afraid to come in front of the committee. It's interesting. He's here. He doesn't seem to be too afraid. In fact, for some reason, the chairman, who on multiple occasions invited the witness to come on TV, so apparently the chairman wants to pretend like his statements on television or in interviews don't matter, but it didn't happen once, it didn't happen twice, it happened multiple times. The chairman said the witness can choose whether to come to a deposition or to a public hearing in front of the committee. The witness accepted the chairman's invitation. It just so happens the witness is here. If the committee wants to hear from the witness and the chairman gave the witness that option, then the only folks that are afraid to hear from the witness with the American people watching are my friends on the other side of the aisle. I don't know if there's a proper motion, Mr. Chairman, but I'll make a motion. Let's vote. Let's take a vote. Who wants to hear from Hunter right now, today? Anyone? Come on. Who wants to hear from Hunter?
Motion's out of order. Yeah.
No one. So I'm a visual learner, and the visual is clear. Nobody over there don't want to hear from the witness.
Thank you. Mr. Raskin.
Thank you kindly, Mr. Chairman. And I was glad that my colleague, Mr. Goldman from New York, was able to answer some of the surprising things that we heard from our esteemed colleague, Ms. Mace, right before we had our break. You know, it's very clear that Joe Biden is, that there's no evidence that has turned up over the last 7 months that Joe Biden is guilty of any criminal wrongdoing, any high crime and misdemeanor, much less prostitution, bribery, money laundering, or any of the crimes that were set forth in that laundry list that that Ms. Mace offered at the end. So I do hope she will clarify that. Let's see, Ms. Wayne, you're here as the Assistant General Counsel of Johnson & Johnson. Do I have that right?
Yes, sir.
And Johnson & Johnson paid $5 billion out in the opioid litigation and $4 billion in the talcum powder litigation. Is that right? Those numbers roughly correct?
Congressman, as far as I'm aware.
Okay. So are you here to complain about meritorious lawsuits being brought by consumers in cases like these, or frivolous and meritless cases being brought by consumers?
Congressman, an excellent point. We're not here to talk about limiting aggrieved consumers' access to justice. We're here to talk about transparency, regulation, disclosure around third-party litigation funding, which has an effect of actually diluting the claims that have merit with the influx of meritless lawsuits.
Okay, so you have no problem with the litigants who went to court in the opioid cases or in other mass toxic tort cases, the BP oil spill or the talcum powder case or so on?
Congressman, as a lawyer,
Yeah.
I believe in access to justice.
Gotcha. And there were no Rule 11 sanctions that your company sought against any of the litigants in those cases, right?
The ones that you mentioned, Congressman?
Yes.
Not as far as I'm aware. In the
Okay.
mass tort context, it's actually extremely different. Because we have no access to information regarding the thousands of claims brought against us, because plaintiffs aren't required to actually produce evidence of product usage or injury alleged from the product, we're essentially hamstrung from using Rule 11 to bring sanctions on those individual cases. We're also hamstrung in many cases from filing 12b6 motions, because that motion practice is usually suspended in the MDL process.
So you're saying you can't move to dismiss in a class action lawsuit?
Not a class action, Congressman, right? We're talking about multi-district litigation, which is a different animal.
Yeah.
Multi-district litigation, the aggregation of thousands of claims. Typically what we see are judges suspending motion practice, 12B, 12E, the usual discovery practices.
Yeah. Okay, well, that might be something interesting to look at, but to my understanding, anybody who brings vexatious, frivolous, or meritless litigation can be sanctioned by the courts. And, but I appreciate your candor in saying that that was not the case in the opioid litigation or in the talcum powder case.
What I said, Congressman, is that we believe in access to justice. So
Yeah.
those who brought those cases had their day in court. We don't stand in the way of that, of course.
Right.
And as I mentioned earlier, we don't believe that the talcum powder cases have merit. We believe that that is actually all driven by third-party litigation funding.
All right, fair enough. Well, maybe we should stop there because we're just going to disagree about that. And obviously, the settlement speaks for itself. One of our colleagues, actually several of our colleagues raised this issue, but one of them asked whether the Chinese government might have used intellectual property law or lawyers to achieve power over the U.S. government and to undermine American society. And I think I found at least one good answer to this question. And I'd like to submit for the record this November 6, 2018 Associated Press article headlined, "China Grants 18 Trademarks in 2 Months to Donald Trump and Daughter." In the early days of the Trump administration, Donald Trump and his daughter Ivanka got 18 trademarks from the Chinese government that she had been unable to get before, and there were lots of allegations about conflict of interest and influence peddling in the scheme. So I'd like to submit that for the record, Mr. Chairman.
Very good. Very good.
Yeah, I yield back. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gosar.
This amendment claims that Hunter Biden has cooperated with this committee's investigation. How has he cooperated with the investigation if he has not abided by a congressional subpoena? Abby Lowell has never discussed scope or logic with us, and we have identified at least 2 checks directly to Joe Biden where we traced the money directly through the Biden influence peddling schemes. That is a fact. We have published evidence. This isn't like Adam Schiff and the Steele dossier where you just make stuff up. We have produced bank records, and bank records don't lie. So Mr. Biden mocked our legitimate congressional impeachment inquiry and flew to D.C. to hang out outside of Congress and did not show his face for a deposition. He is not in compliance. He openly defied a congressional subpoena. Do any other members wish to speak on this amendment?
Mr. Chairman.
Chair recognizes Mr. Raskin.
I want to yield back to Mr. Goldman. Before I do, I just want to pose a question to you. When you said that there was documented checks involving the president in an influence scheme, are you referring to the auto loan repayment checks between Joe and Hunter Biden?
You mean the Porsche he got from Uzbekistan? Which auto are you?
I don't know what kind of car, but are those the checks that you're referring to?
The checks we're referring to were a check for $200,000 that came through the influence peddling scheme with AmeriCorps Health, and the $40,000 check that came through the influence peddling scheme with China, where I believe Mr. Bobulinski has stated publicly was a company that Joe Biden was supposed to be 10% owner.
Okay, I'll reclaim my time. I think in both cases, I mean, there were a lot of words there, Mr. Chairman, but I think you're referring to the auto loan repayment with Hunter Biden. You're referring to the James Biden repayment. But if you've got documented receipts of foreign governments giving money directly to President Joe Biden, that's an outrageous violation of the Emoluments Clause, like the $7.8 million that Donald Trump pocketed while he was president, which for some reason you guys don't care about because you think the Constitution only applies to Democrats and not to Donald Trump. Because hey, that's an identifying characteristic of an authoritarian political party. It's got a charismatic leader whose word is considered above the Constitution, above the rule of law. You refuse to accept the results of democratic elections that don't go your way if you're an authoritarian party, and then you refuse to disavow or you embrace political violence as an instrument for obtaining and maintaining political power. So you guys didn't like when President Biden said that your party under Donald Trump has fallen into semi-fascist ways of operation. If the shoe semi-fits, you semi-wear it, okay? Now, I'd like to yield back to Mr. Goldman.
Would the gentleman yield to a question?
Well, yeah, I'll take a quick question.
I just want to clarify. We have a wire that went directly from CEFC, which banks have identified as a state-owned entity from China. That this wire went from CEFC to Hunter Biden, then to Joe Biden for $40,000.
Okay.
Joe Biden has been directly implicated in the family influence peddling scheme at least 2 times.
No, you haven't. You have not. I've not ever seen that.
You have not
Well,
produced
read the bank memo.
You have not
The
produced
40,000 is for Jim Biden.
No. The 200,000 is from Jim Biden. The 40,000 is from Hunter Biden.
All right, but please produce the
I look
documentation.
We have it. We have 4 bank memorandums.
Give it to the members of this committee and
4 bank memorandums.
Okay, I'll reclaim my
4.
time, Mr.
There
Chair.
has never been a more substantive
I'm saving my time. You go ahead, but I'm saving my
in
time.
the 7 years I've been in Congress.
All right, let me say this. The Democrats undertook a serious investigation despite every effort by the chairman to undermine it, and we determined there were $7.8 million documented receipts from foreign governments to Donald Trump. You guys don't care about that. That's unfortunate.
Will the ranking member yield?
But if you've got documented...
Will the ranking member yield?
Yeah, we will in just a moment. Let me make my point, okay? If you have documented receipts of foreign governments writing checks or giving credit card payments to Joe Biden, show it to us. We've been at this for a year now. We haven't seen anything. Then we show you in our more than 100-page report the documented receipts of money going to Donald Trump, but you don't care about it. In other words, you don't care about the principle that our government leaders should not be on the take from foreign governments. That's outrageous.
Well,
because I will oppose any government official of any political party who's on the take with money from foreign governments, and I hope you would join me in that. And yet we've shown it to you, and yet you guys don't care about it. I mean, that's just unfathomable to me. Now, at least the Trump family has responded to it. I mean, they're very nervous about it. You know what the Trump's people say, well, he didn't take his $400,000 government salary. You know what? That's the only thing you're allowed to take is your salary from Americans, not money from corrupt Saudi monarchs who ordered the assassination of journalists, not from Chinese communist bureaucrats crushing the human rights of people in Tibet and the Uyghurs. You're not supposed to be on the take from those governments. That's what our Constitution says. Then they say, well, we return the profits. These guys think it's, well, if it's a hotel, they could just keep the money. At least the Trump family understands. Some lawyer told them what the Constitution says. We return the profits. Well, guess what? They didn't give us the accounting of the profits, and that's not what the Constitution says. The Constitution says you can't take any payments at all from a foreign government without going to the Congress of the United States. It's not that you can't keep the profits from foreign governments. Do you guys understand what you're doing here? You're putting that
Gentlemen,
White House
time's
for sale.
expired. Chair recognizes Mr. Timmon from South Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My colleagues across the aisle missed the point here. The Trump family has pre-existing businesses built over decades, hotels all over the world, and President Trump divested himself of control over those businesses to his children, and business arm's length transactions between foreign governments and between the Trump International Hotel chain, there's actually an arm's length transaction. They're getting hotel rooms, they're getting food and whatever from these hotels. So the difference is this. The Biden family doesn't produce anything. They don't have anything. They don't have hotels. They don't have services rendered. There are none. Hunter Biden has said that he was on the board of Burisma and he has no qualifications. They actually cannot document any service rendered by the Biden family, whether it's Jim Biden, whether it's Hunter Biden. So that's the issue. The issue is that the Biden family, all they have is the big guy and his policy favoritism, and that's why we're here. And I just think y'all are muddying the water, and it's not doing the American people justice.
Would the gentleman yield? Would the gentleman yield?
Yes, I will yield to.
I thank the gentleman. I do want to point out that, to the point that Mr. Timmons was making, that the operation of the Trump Hotel was a legitimate enterprise that was approved by this committee in 2013, before President Trump was elected to office. But prior to that, it was the old post office. It was losing $6 million per year. The turnaround was a plus $3 million that went to the federal government. And as Mr. Timmons pointed out, it was divested to the family, to the children. It was not run by the president.
Will you yield for a question on that?
I'll yield for a question.
Well, when you say it was divested, are you claiming that Donald Trump surrendered any ownership interest? Because he continued to own it. He put it into a trust for his sole benefit. He said the day-to-day management would be turned over to his sons, but he was still the beneficial owner of it, and he stayed involved, as we know, because he kept talking about all the business that was coming in from abroad.
Well, the gentleman's question is legitimate in the context that most elected officials put their assets in trust for their own benefit after they leave office.
But it was not a blind trust.
He should not be forced to divest himself of the asset, an asset that was approved by this committee.
No, I'm afraid not.
You're referring to... I'm reclaiming the time yielded to me by Mr. Timmons to point out that what is happening right here should concern every American citizen, because we refuse to prosecute, to investigate and prosecute corruption. We are constantly pounded about corruption in other countries, but we've got corruption right here that we do not. We form partisan sides on this thing, and we don't do our job. I've been here 9 years and 7 days and gone through multiple hearings in the Oversight Committee dealing with corruption, and it turns into a partisan battle when we ought to be trying to make sure that we restore the American people's confidence in this government. What Hunter Biden should have done, he should have presented himself in answer to the subpoena. I'm not trying to take sides in this. I want the evidence to speak for itself, and it will never speak for itself if we don't have people come before the committee as they're required to do.
Will the gentleman yield for a question? Would you yield for one final question?
I'll yield to the gentleman.
Thank you kindly. And thank you for the spirit and the substance of your remarks, which I think significantly uplift the tone of the conversation. You would agree with me that the Emoluments Clause applies to government officials, and presumably you would agree with me that Hunter Biden is not and has never been a government official. So this is about a relative of the president, right? So we have Donald Trump, who's collecting $7.8 million at least. It's probably 4 or 5 times that much, and that's just during the presidency. But he was
Chairman,
president.
reclaiming my time.
And he was president.
It's Mr. Timmons' time.
Ranking member, do you have any evidence that Donald Trump received any of this money you're alleging that was received by the Trump Hotel organization?
Yes, he bragged about it, and in fact, he returned what he called the profits to the government, which gave the game away.
So $8 million in revenue, of which you don't know what the costs were associated with that, and you don't have any evidence that the president actually received any of this money. By the way,
we've got all the evidence. Have you read our report yet, Mr. Timmons?
What is the amount of money that you allege he's received?
$7.8 million, and it's a tiny fraction.
That's just factually inaccurate.
Have you read our report?
That's revenue. It's not.
I beseech beseech you to read the report. I'll read any book you want me to read, any poem, any ghost story, whatever it is. Read the report, please. Read the report.
Please.
My time's expired, Mr.
All
Chairman.
right, gentlemen, time's expired. Before I recognize the next member, since Mr. Raskin's into reading, I'd like to submit to the record the last bank memorandum, the bank memorandum that details the Chinese wire that went to Hunter Biden, then to Joe Biden. It's in the bank memorandum. This is substantive memorandum. This is the fourth memorandum. If you need the other three, we will resend them to you.
Mr. Chairman, can I introduce something for the record, too, before we break?
Yes, but without objection, we entered in the fourth bank memorandum into the record. Now you have something, Mr. Raskin.
Yes, this comes from Newsweek. This is Republican Congressman Andy Biggs warns his party has, quote, nothing to campaign on.
All right, without objection.
I object.
So ordered.
I object. Has nothing to do with the subject at hand.
Oh, well, it was very much discussed by the members today.
I still object.
Okay, could I call for a vote on that then, Mr. Chairman? Yeah?
Yeah,
All right, thank you. Let's get our members to vote.
we'll do a. All right, all those in favor of entering into the record a new
Aye.
story, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. No. It's
I'd like recorded vote, Mr. Chairman. Recorded vote.
Recorded votes called as previously announced. Further proceedings on the question will be postponed. We have votes coming up on the House floor. So, all right. Okay. We have votes on the House floor. Have they been called? They're going to be called in 30 minutes. Votes on the House floor are going to be called in 30 minutes. We will recess until the last vote has been recorded. Then we'll reconvene and take up the amendments and the votes.